welcome to the executive. I will do my best to see me moving forward. We don't have the microphones and lights, so people just need to maybe indicate with their hands to let me know if they wish to speak. Before we begin, can I just say that the sound system in this room will be very sensitive, so private conversations and mutterings will be picked up on the live stream. So just to make people aware of that at this stage, so anything out of turn that is then used with the public. If we can now begin, do we have any apologies?
No, there are no apologies.
Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Yeah, as Director of the Dublin Hall Trust, and given the strategic property review talks about finances and also the potential of phase 3 on the Dublin Hall Trust, and particularly that interest, I will accuse myself from that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Boyce, and we'll have that noted in the minute. Okay, it takes us to the minute of the meeting on the 4th of October. First of all, we're happy to agree that it's a 2 minute.
Okay, Adrian.
Is there any particular items that anybody would require clarification on in relation to the minute? No. Okay, thank you. Item 4 is the rolling action log, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Convener. As usual, the rolling action log reports where the executive has requested reports for particular future meetings. The rolling action log has been updated, and where reports are not available for this meeting, the reason has been set out in the comments section of the action log. But as usual, the rolling action log is available for questions for members.
Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, just a question, Convener, in relation to log number 571. Now, I note from the information in the log that a report has been put off to June next year. I'm not very happy with that. Now, I'm just wondering if the wrong questions were asked as part of the initiative once the pilot was completed. And why didn't we actually go into a full consultation exercise when the pilot was completed as well? It would have saved a lot of time and we could possibly have had the report by now. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nimmo. I'll go to Kenny Gillespie.
Through yourself, Convener, apologies for my voice. I'm choked a wee bit with the cold today, so apologies. I'll try and be as clear as possible for you. Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Nimmo. The questions were asked. Unfortunately, out of the pilot we tried 24 people, only 3 responded, and the responses were very minimal and not answering all the questions. However, taking on board your point, we decided to say actually we'll go out for a full report, but taking involved other aspects, not just about the close cleaning, things in regards to, is this a service that all tenants want? Is it something that we need to look at? Well, it is something we need to look at in regards to impact on budgets, especially on the back of potential rent freezes. We also want to explore the impact that a service charge may have on any low income houses, and also looking at further consultation with owner occupiers in regards to mixed tenure through looking at potential factoring. I think also we need to make sure that we're comfortable with affordability. These are all questions that need to be asked to get a full report back to yourselves as members. The information we had was not enough for me to put a report to allow members to make an informed decision. That's why we're having to go out and get a full report, Councillor.
Thanks very much for that information, Kenny. Just a follow-up, Convener, if I may. Regarding the full consultation that you're going to be undertaking, how many tenants are we actually going to include in this full consultation exercise?
We'll be looking to include all tenants because it's their rent money, Councillor Nimmo.
Okay, thanks, Kenny. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions in relation to the rolling action log? Happy to agree?
Agree.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the referral from the audit committee and the risk management assurance policy and framework and corporate risk management. And I think we've got Danny Kearney with us today who's going to take this report.
Thank you, convener. This report presents an updated risk management assurance policy and framework for consideration and approval. And this follows due consideration of the paper at the committee in November. The policy is included at Appendix 1, and the areas which have been changed highlighted in yellow. Before this, the last update to the policy was in October 2021. The policy has been updated through detailed discussions at the Corporate Risk Management Group and CMT. There have been no significant changes to the policy. There has been some update to the roles and responsibilities across the Council in respect of risk. It is proposed that the corporate risk management updates will continue to come to the Audit Committee and the Executive on a quarterly basis, and be referring to the Future Committee as required. Section 5.2 of the report highlights that the guidance and templates have been reviewed to help ensure that the policy can be applied consistently. This training will be scheduled to support members and officers, but given current pressures, particularly in respect of the budget, it's likely that training will take place in the second quarter of 2023. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. The paper was discussed at length at the Audit Committee and it's been reviewed to reflect the changes within the very volatile financial climate and therefore the risks associated with that. Key risks being not being able to take difficult decisions that will enable the Council to become financially sustainable, and that is something that all members are very aware of right now. So on the back of that, I'm happy to move the report as it is, and Councillor Biggs.
Can I formally second you, convener, and reserve the right to come back in?
Thank you. I'll open it up if there's any questions on the report. No, we're happy to agree. Okay, thank you. Item 6 is Falkirk 2022 Delivering Best Value Strategic Action Plan progress, and it is with the Chief Executive.
Thank you, convener, and good morning to all. So this report is the second update of the Executive on the Best Value Strategic Action Plan, which was agreed by the Council in February following the publication of the Best Value Assurance Report in January of this year. And further to the previous report to the Executive in August, it includes an overview of progress made against the key actions set out in the plan. So that's at Appendix 1, and that covers the period September to November. And also at Appendix 2, there are 3 case studies showing in detail the progress made on capital communities and the Falkirk Community Trust. So progress on the plan is tracked and reported to the corporate management team on a quarterly basis to ensure that the Council delivers on its commitment to achieve best value. The overall plan is nearly 65% complete at this stage, and actions have been completed to date in timescale. And the remaining themes and actions are scheduled for completion between December at the end of this month and March 2023, and currently are on track to do so. Delivery of the action plan is essential if we're going to achieve our aims in terms of best value. But beyond that, we also need to maintain our focus on all of these issues, in part to deliver on the Council plan priorities, but also so that we're in the strongest possible position to deal with the scale of the financial challenges that we face in the forthcoming period. So beyond the lifetime of the plan, we clearly need to continue to progress work on collaborative leadership to support effective decision making, to continue work on partnership, working with our communities, to continue the focus on equalities and delivering on the Council the future transformation projects, and indeed in terms of the capital programme. Members will also recall that we will be subject to further best value review later this year. I received confirmation from the Accounts Commission last week that Falkirk will be one of 8 councils in that initial programme starting from October 2023. And our ability to demonstrate significant and ongoing progress against our Best Value Action Plan priorities, and in particular, our ability to demonstrate that we are seriously addressing the issue of financial sustainability, will be fundamental to the outcome of that review. And turning to the recommendations, you're asked to note the progress made with the specific Best Value strategic actions. Myself and my colleagues who lead on the individual themes would be happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. It's good to see that there's clear progress within the action plan that's been put in place, 65% having been completed, and clear milestones with the remaining part of the plan. However, I think there needs to be a clear demonstration that the process has outcomes, and that still has to be demonstrated, and that includes the leadership working collaboratively across officers and members, and that financial sustainability, as well as making sure that we do deliver transformation of our services and equalities. Priorities within the council plan, all our decisions should be linked to those, but the scale of the challenge that is before us financially is something that the auditors will certainly be very close to that when they come back, and they will be looking for the confidence in the council that we have a plan in place that's robust and able to be delivered on. So while there has been for the auditors to come back in the second year, and ultimately we need to make sure that we do have a financial strategy that's going to cover that longer term, and obviously able to make sure we deliver quality services in the future. So I'm happy to move the report.
I have a question I've been asked by my deputy leader of the non-aligned independent group. Anthony. Climate change objectives. Is this a burden on the council? What assistance do we receive from government to bankroll climate change measures?
That really doesn't form.
Well, it does.
Your question doesn't form necessarily part of the report,
If you look
because
at
it's on the action plan.
number 3, page 58, climate change implications.
That's a part of the report, that every report that we put in climate change implications.
Well, the question then is relevant because we want to know if the government's prepared to bankroll it.
So Laurie?
Well, clearly as a council, we've got an ambition towards a net zero target. We've had proposals in a number of reports. One on the agenda today in relation to SPR is very relevant to our ability to reduce our carbon footprint. In terms of the capital funding we get, we take choices about where to allocate that in terms of meeting our goals, but in terms of longer term funding for in relation to the journey to net zero, I'm unable to comment on that. But,
so I'd be right in saying there's no remuneration coming from central government.
There's a number of funding strands that come from central government to Falkirk Council and local authorities to assist with our net zero ambitions. So that doesn't form part of this report. It is in previous other reports, particularly our previous meeting around climate change, where it was detailed quite extensively in such years. Councillor?
Yep. Thanks, convener. My screen keeps freezing every now and again. I don't know if anybody else is having the same problem, but it seems to be okay at the moment. I totally agree. The delivery of the action plan is essential, but it does beg the question as to why this report is merely for noting. I would have thought there would have been a lot more decisions to be taken in relation to this? And get some comments maybe from the chief executive.
Thank you, Convener. And what we have in place is a series of actions that have been agreed by the council in terms of our response to best value. These actions, as the report notes, are being taken forward under these various themes and are monitored by the corporate management team on a regular basis. So I think it's the report is simply setting out the progress we've made in relation to these. It doesn't require decisions of members beyond that, but clearly if there's particular issues of concern to members or questions they want to raise, we're happy to deal with them.
Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Bunley.
Thanks, Convener. On page 58, 1.2, it lays out the 3 priorities of the council plan. The first being supporting stronger and healthier communities, second, promoting opportunities in educational attainment and reducing inequalities, and number 3, supporting a thriving economy and green transition. And when officers write reports and we get a breakdown of climate change implications, we get a breakdown of the inequality implications, but we don't get a breakdown of an assessment of how it's going to impact communities. It's going to make it stronger and bigger. And is there any scope in potentially having this in reports in the future to ensure we're meeting our plan?
I mean, I would have hoped that all reports, in terms of the narrative within them, that reflect on the impact in relation to communities. I'm not convinced that we need a separate section on all of these issues. I think there's a danger that the reports themselves can perhaps become overly bureaucratic. I don't know if the Chief Governance Officer wants to comment on that. I mean, ultimately, if members have views as to what needs to be included in reports, and officers will clearly respond to that.
I think, Convener, it's something which we find more commonly in the reports now, particularly in the first section, the purpose of the report. So reflecting on, just clicking on to our next item, it does identify the priority within the council plan that it links most closely to. So I think officers should have this in mind when they are preparing the reports for members' consideration. And I suspect that the reference in the reports which we're on just now is simply to the fact that it covers all 3 of the council priorities because of the breadth of the best value action plan.
Okay, okay with that, Councillor Bunley. Okay. No other questions? We're happy to agree the report. Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7 and property review.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of the report today is to provide an update on the strategic property review and sets out actions to deliver on the Council's approved property strategy, objectives and principles. The proposals as set out in the report contribute to the delivery of the Council Plan's strategic priorities of contributing to a thriving economy and supporting a green transition to the reduction of carbon emissions. Council's best value audit for 2022 noted the need to increase the pace of change and make difficult decisions. The SPR is one such of those decisions. Their decisions will be required. As members will be aware, the Council is facing unprecedented challenges financially, and the SPR, as set out in the report, will make a significant contribution to meeting those challenges. In addition to revenue savings, pressures on capital will also be reduced, with lesser buildings requiring capital investment going forward, including dealing with an estimated £200 million backlog in maintenance. I won't go through the report in detail, Chair, Convener, as we have had various briefings, and I'm sure members will have considered its content with great interest. In summary, the report seeks to recognise the property strategy that was developed, which was following extensive engagement with members and communities and was approved in 2021, together with the progress that has been made to date as outlined in the report. Despite this progress, more needs to be done and quicker, as the council estate continues to be too large for it to sustain due to the financial challenges, its deteriorating condition, and the backlog of investment it needs to have, has resulted in declining performance. To meet these challenges, it is proposed that a rationalisation of the estate takes place, as set out in the report. The focus is on properties considered non-core or essential to frontline service delivery. The proposed approach is a proactive phased one to enable time to transition to a more effective and efficient state. As set out in recommendation 3, agreement is sought today in principle to establish the implementation and rationalisation programme based on the phases and timescales proposed. As set out in recommendation 4, it's proposed that public consultation is undertaken to ascertain from our communities proposals for alternative delivery models or asset transfer proposals, to enable some properties to be retained. This process will enable further work on equalities and poverty impacts to be undertaken, with both of these proposed to be reported upon in early 2023 for final decision. Recommendations further propose that officers will bring forward a report to the Children's and Young Persons Executive early in 2023 on the closure of 4 secondary school swimming pools. Final recommendations set out and emphasise convener that communities will be supported and encouraged to develop capacity to enable things such as community asset transfer or alternative approaches to retain properties that they consider to be a priority. To enable this capacity building and to provide the best prospects for success, not only will substantial officer support be provided, the establishment of the £6 million fund is proposed to support communities' aspirations and enable them to take forward proposals. The SPR, if approved, will be a significant change, but one that is required to enable our core property assets to be more sustainable financially and affordable going forward. An estimated saving of £3.9 million is set out in the report, but it's also worth noting that the approach will mitigate against future cost pressures of approximately £1.7 million. In terms of contributing to our carbon emissions and our environmental ambitions, an estimated 26% reduction in property carbon emissions would be achieved through this approach. In terms of condition, we simply cannot afford to meet the estimated £200 million of backlog repairs. However, with this approach, we will be able to tackle a large portion of that going forward, and we'll also be able to improve matters such as suitability and accessibility across the estate. The phased approach will enable communities and council to manage the transition to a smaller estate, to develop proposals for properties proposed to be retained. And whilst extensive in terms of the properties involved, it should be noted that in terms of floor area, those under consideration represent less than 15% of the total estate. In conclusion, an overburdensome property portfolio with increasing costs represents a risk to the council, but also in terms of wider service delivery and staff numbers. When fully implemented, the council will be able to focus on sustaining and improving the assets retained and provide an efficient estate that is more effectively managed and affordable going forward, while still continue to enable service delivery to it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. I am aware that there are a number of amendments related to this particular item, and firstly, perhaps maybe I want to have that, make sure that they've been circulated to everybody, so that everybody's had sight of those. First of which is a procedural motion, and I intend to take that first before we go into the debate. I will just give officers a minute to circulate their amendments. Just as the final circulations in the budget, I'll go to Mr. Digger just in relation to the procedural motion.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I understand through advance information for which I thank Councillor Hannah for the proposal to move this matter be related to council rather than be considered at the executive. And in terms of the standing orders, that constitutes a procedural proposal which is voted on separately from the substantive issues which are proposed in the report. And that is to avoid the situation where the two issues of a procedural issue are related. So it would be appropriate, I think, to invite Councillor Hannah to make her proposal that the matter moves to council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I mean, this report is a valiant attempt by our officers to find a way of closing the budget gap for 23-24. But I think we need to address the question of why that budget gap exists. First of all, and first and foremost, the budget gap is there because the Scottish Government has been reducing the funding to local government year on year since it was taken over by the SNP. When Labour was last in control of the Scottish Government, 33% of the Scottish budget went to local government. This year it's 24%. The Audit Scotland report from the Scottish Government has also shown that in the last financial year, 21-22, the Scottish Government actually underspent by £2 billion. I think we need to be very clear that the problem here is a budget gap, and a strategic property review is another blunt way of trying to fill that budget gap. Now, in relation to each of the individual wards in this council area, there are proposed closures in every single ward. The closures that are being proposed and that we are being asked in principle to agree to are very wide ranging. In my ward, there are 18 properties. In some wards, there are more than that. In some wards where we have no councillors here today, there are a number of closures. I think it's important in the interests of openness and transparency that all councillors on this council have an opportunity to ask questions and to raise issues and to vote on a proposal that impacts every single community in our area. This report is very far-reaching. I'm sure that I'm not the only councillor that has had numerous phone calls, emails, concerns raised by people about a range of different issues. I think the scale of this issue is such that it would be important to allow the whole of the council to decide on it. In addition to that, we know that on the 15th of December, the Scottish Government will be announcing the budgets for next year. It seems to me to be precipitate at this point to be talking about such swinging closures when we don't even know what the budget will be for next year. Budget gap is. And I fully accept that we need to take really very serious decisions to try to meet that budget gap. But I'm not convinced that this is the way of doing it. And if it is, then give it to the whole council, not just to this subset of councillors. I move the motion to take this to full council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah, do you have a seconder?
Happy to second that, convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Patterson. Just before we go to the vote, this is a policy matter. Well, there is a budget implication along with it is a policy matter, and the policy matter should be dealt with by the executive. And this is the correct place for this particular decision to be taken. Councillor Spears, this isn't a debate. We're going to move to the vote.
So you don't want any questions around?
If it's a relevant question,
Well, before we move to the vote, it'd be very relevant to find out what actions this council has been taking in approaching the Scottish Government.
that's not
I think
relevant.
everybody's seen the Chancellor's statement where money was given.
This is not a debate, Councillor Spears. I'm going to stop you there. This is a procedural motion. We are moving to a decision of whether to hear today or move to full council. And I was very clear on that. Councillor Panday.
Able to request a recess.
5 minutes, please. Okay, folks, if we can come back. I think that's us live again.
Thanks for that, convener.
Okay, can we move to the vote?
Yes, thank you, convener. And just as a reminder, this is a vote on the motion from Councillor Hannah to defer consideration of this item to full council. And as a procedural motion, the vote is for or against. So Councillor Bundy.
Against.
Councillor Devine.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hannah.
For.
Councillor Kerr.
Against.
Councillor Meiklejohn.
Against.
Councillor Nimmo.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Sinclair.
Against.
Councillor Spears. For. And Councillor Steinbach.
For.
There are 5 votes for the motion. There are 6 against. The motion falls and the substantive debate proceeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. We will then move into the debate. I appreciate there's a number of other amendments also coming forward, and again, happy to accommodate if there's further recess that's required in order to have further discussions. But I'll now move to Councillor Garner.
Thank you, convener, and I'd like to thank, and I think on behalf of all members, Mr. Gettrick and Mr. Benny for the members' briefings and many meetings they've had preceding this report coming forward. The strategic property review has been ongoing for a number of years, and it's important to acknowledge a fair amount of progress has been made. And as we're all too well aware, the council faces unprecedented financial challenges that have amassed over many years through poor decision making and must respond radically. Attached to our council property portfolio specifically, we have huge increases in energy and maintenance costs. We've also across this chamber agreed to reduce our carbon footprint, and rationalising our property estate can make a big contribution to this. The council's previously agreed property strategy, financial strategy and the findings of the best value review all highlight the need for members to progress change in this area to meet the fiscal challenges we face and to do so quickly. In this context, the SPR was always going to be significant and far-reaching, as property is one of the largest areas of council spend, out with staff and direct service delivery costs. Whilst it seems like there's a lot of properties under review, in the report those listed actually represent less than 15% of the portfolio in terms of floor area. That statistic alone should reinforce to everyone that Falkirk Council's estate is simply too large for us to afford going forward. Moving forward, we need to make better use of our retained properties by diverting as many activities as possible to these. Our focus should then be on using the limited money we have to improve the core of properties we need to keep for pupils and the vulnerable, and stop trying to paper over the cracks every year on buildings that are increasingly unfit for purpose. The proposal to close the 4 secondary school swimming pools reflects this approach, but it needs to be recognised that the decision on these will be considered by the Children's and Young Person Executive Committee following the undertaking of an Equalities and Poverty Impact Assessment. On all the other properties under consideration, the report clearly sets out the proposed community consultation. This exercise will provide the opportunity for all our communities and stakeholders to engage on proposals for things such as community asset transfer or other models of delivery. The report highlights that to support these, a fund of £6 million will be set up, and also the officer support will be available to help communities develop capacity to manage properties. A key consideration from the paper is to look forward, and whilst the closure of properties is always contentious, by providing time and setting out a structured approach to all communities and others to be given the opportunity to retain these properties, we have the best prospects for success to be achieved. By agreeing this report and enabling the community consultations to take place, we can gather the views of local people, and proposals for community ownership for management can be progressed. I am hopeful there will be many successes. Where this isn't achieved, properties can be leased or sold, which could generate income for the council and potentially support economic activity. Some elected members have concerns on equalities and poverty impacts, but if members read the report, it highlights what has been done to date and what more is proposed through the community engagement. The outcome of this will be reported upon together with the findings of the community consultation when the final decisions will be considered next year. The continued subsidising of many of these facilities, in particular leisure facilities managed by Falkirk Community Trust, is not financially sustainable. In conclusion, as previously reported and recognised by the communities and the councillors, the council has too many property assets. These are deteriorating in terms of condition, and with current financial challenges, there is substantial risk if we do not rationalise. If fully implemented, the council will be able to focus on sustaining and improving the assets retained and provide an efficient estate that is more affordable while still continuing to enable service delivery to our communities. Convener, I have an addendum. We read this out just now. And obviously I move the recommendations contained within their support alongside this addition. I think everybody has this one. And it's recommendation as follows. In addition at point 9, agrees to the establishment of a policy development panel chaired by the Education and Leisure portfolio holder to look at a future model for delivering leisure services for the district, and that the panel commence work following the final decision in February. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I'm happy to second the report. The review of the properties being identified with too much by way of property that's expensive, poor condition, underutilised, not energy efficient, and not fit for modern service delivery. Therefore, we need to look at what the aspiration for this council is. This was at first identified following a review in 2016, and since then there has been progress made on rationalisation of the estate, but mainly an operational and office estate. It was recognised that over a sustained period of time there has been a lack of investment in our leisure estate, with repairs and maintenance required now at £20 million to bring them up to a reasonable standard. However, that alone will not provide a level of business transformation that will significantly reduce the subsidy that is currently going in to support them and provide a revenue stream for the council. The need to rationalise and invest was recognised again in 2018, and where the previous SNP administration brought forward a report which would have seen closures but also a £50 million investment programme. That fell due to other parties not supporting and favouring, but continue to allow further decay and rising costs. And that's part of why we are in the position that we are now. Compared to other councils, we have a higher proportion of leisure facilities, but many are no longer fit for purpose and do not provide a good user experience and cost more to use. Council is under severe financial pressure with a £60 million budget gap to be bridged over the next 4 years, 50% of that gap to be found this coming year. As a result, we need to address this and do so at pace due to increasing affordability challenges and the deterioration of our property estate. This has been highlighted in the most recent best value audit. We now have run out of options. Current position is not sustainable and poses a huge risk in being able to deliver on the council's financial strategy. I'm more than happy to support the addendum that's been moved by my colleague Councillor Garner. I think that gives the opportunity for members to become involved and to shape how our leisure services are developed forward, to ensure that we are able to provide good quality services for the future. So I'm happy to second. I'll now open the debate, and I'll have Councillor Nimmo first and then Councillor.
Convener, can I possibly just clarify something in relation to this item? Is it proposed that we deal with the SPR and the possibility of closures out with the normal budget process?
Yes, for a number of years, as a council, we've spoken about bringing forward reports out with the budget process in order to progress our work in delivering the financial strategy and take early decisions. So yes, I mean the report is brought forward today for decision, albeit decisions in principle.
So any future decisions, Kenneth, that are taken regarding closures will be dealt with by the executive and not the full council, because normally the budget decisions are dealt with by every elected member. That's not going to be the case in this case then.
I think it's always been the case, Councillor Nimmo, that the executive has taken decisions which will have an impact on the council. We can think of others that have even in the last year or so, decisions that are related to the delivery of the Council of the Future programme have in some instances come before either the executive or the Education, Children and Young People's executive. So these decisions are appropriately taken in these places, but it doesn't impact on the council having the overall decision on the budget when that comes around on an annual basis.
So it's basically going to be closures by the back door. I'll leave that at that point. The other point I want to make is that the maintenance costs seem to have jumped up by 20 million overnight. In the report, it's 180 million, and there's been a comment made this morning that this has already increased to 200 million. Maybe by next week we'll be at 300 million. What's going on here?
I'll go to Mr Petrick, who will be able to clarify the 180 million position and where we are now, because I think there's a historical time lag there.
Thank you, Convener. The £180 million figure was what was reported in 2016-17, and clearly with construction inflation and the continued deterioration of the estate, conservative estimate is £200 million.
Okay, thank you, Mr Petrick. Councillor Spears.
Yeah, I have 3 questions, and I'll go back to my original one. Can you tell me what approaches Council has made to the Scottish Government? Councillor Hannah very eloquently stated how we had a reduction to 24% in grant from 33%. As I tried to say earlier, the Chancellor of Exchequer at his financial statement a couple of weeks ago had stated that the Scottish Government would be getting a large increase. Can I ask what approaches we've made so that we can get a decent settlement from them?
Thank you, Convener. Clearly, from a COSLA point of view, there's been a lot of activity, very joined up activity, all party activity through COSLA to lobby for local government to maximise the funding settlement. And I think our voice is most likely to be heard as part of that joined up local government approach than on an individual basis. So clearly, as a council, we can also lobby ourselves for additional funding. But I think it's a very proactive approach being taken by COSLA, which, as I say, has had all party support.
I hope that it's not as in previous years where they turn up a couple of days or the day off our budget and announce that they're going to give us an increase. My second question is really, I've been asked by an organisation, the Falkirk Integrated Regional Swim Team. They are greatly concerned that they will no longer exist if this goes ahead. We've already decimated our arts community, and as this has started to decimate our sports communities as well. That's a point to ponder before we make any decisions. And my last question is on behalf of my good friend, Councillor Anne Ritchie, who has asked me to speak up Bo'ness and Blackness, which she has represented for some time. It was my great pleasure to go through and speak to them as a guest speaker when they were restarting their community council, because I begin to feel that Falkirk Council is no longer interested in that particular rural area. And Councillor Ritchie has said that she does not want to see the sports centre and the sporting facilities in Bo'ness decimated by this, if you go ahead with this decision.
Yeah, Mr Petrick.
Yes, thanks, Convener. In terms of access to swimming pools, clearly as part of the community consultation and engagement, we would be looking to speak to all affected users or certainly seek views. However, it is worth noting that Falkirk Council does have one of the highest, it's not the highest, but one of the highest levels of swimming pools across our estate in comparison to other authorities. To give you an example, Falkirk has 8 swimming pools in our schools. Glasgow has also 8 in their swimming pools to draw a comparison. So just, that's the point to note in terms of access to swimming pools. In terms of Bowness Recreation, clearly highlighted within the report as one that would be considered for rationalisation. Timing of it would be in 2025 to allow us time to look at the relocation of users and groups, particularly to the next door school, the secondary school, where there is substantial sports facilities there that can also be accessed. So we'll look to work with users on relocations over that intervening time period.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kentrick. Councillor Hannah, and if you could maybe move your amendment, and we'll take the amendment first before we take the consent.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, that was my intention. I think I do have a further amendment to this, the recommendations in this report, and I think we have to look very carefully at the whole question of consultation here. We're asked in this recommendation here to note that there was extensive community consultations. Now, I have looked at the community consultation that was done. It was done in December 2020, from December 2020 to April 2021. Now, I don't know if any of the other councillors around this table remember December 2020, but we were in total lockdown at that point. Many people were not able to go and visit their family in homes. There were all sorts of things because of the COVID pandemic that were going on. Now, to say that there was extensive consultations when it was all entirely online, when there was a limit to how much people could get together, I think is slightly exaggerating the thing. So I'm not happy about accepting that, and have therefore proposed in my amendment that we accept that there was limited community consultation in 2020, and there has been some progress since. The second issue that I would like to raise is the issue of being asked here today to agree in principle. It says the proposed rationalisation of the properties, but it seems to me that we are talking about closures, but rationalisation is perhaps not the word I would use when you look at the extent of the properties that are listed here. Now, I would like that particular recommendation to be deleted. I am not against consultation. I'm not here saying we should never shut any of our properties. I know some people in future communities may say that, but I accept that there may be issues within some of the properties once you've done extensive and detailed community consultation. It may be that communities will come back and say, well, we could do this or we could do that. The problem I have with the recommendations here that have been proposed by the administration is that we're putting the cart before the horse. We're talking about agreeing in principle to this closure programme and then taking it out to consultation. So that is why I have proposed this amendment to say we don't agree in principle to this consultation, sorry, to this proposed closure programme, but we do agree to a proper consultation with the community. We need to remember here, as Mr. Kentrick has correctly identified, that £880 million was estimated to be the cost of the maintenance for the buildings. Now, anyone who has a house of their own will know that if there are repairs and maintenance needing done and you don't do it, the problems increase. The problems get worse and get more expensive. If you don't fix the leak in your roof, then you've got a problem further down the line. So what we've had is since 2016-17, we've not had the proper maintenance done on these buildings. And that is now part of the problem that we're facing. What these proposals, if we were to agree in principle to the closure of these properties, we're talking about agreeing to rip in the hearts out of our communities. And we really are not in a position within our Labour group to do that. Councillor Spears has mentioned comments that he has had from other councillors who are not here today. I could list a whole lot of comments from other Labour councillors as well. I could list a whole lot of comments from other organisations. I've had phone calls, I've had emails, and I'm sure other councillors have too. There is a lot of concern about these proposals. I accept that we may have to do some rationalisation, but I do not think at this stage we should be agreeing to a closure in principle. I think we should be agreeing to intensive consultation and engagement with our communities to look at the ways in which we can get the best possible deal for our communities. And the final part of my amendment, sorry, two final parts of the amendment. One is to amend 2.14 to say that once the consultation has been done, once we have further proposals, it should be taken to the full council in February 2023 because of the implications for the budget, that it shouldn't come back to the executive but should come to the full council. In terms of the school swimming pools, I would also want to delete that recommendation because I think it's important that the school swimming pools are also dealt with by full council and not by a subset of councillors. So, to be quite clear, my amendment has been circulated. I think we need to have further consultation without us being asked to agree closures in principle at this stage, that we engage with our communities, all of us engage with our communities, and look at the ways in which we can improve on the estate, look at the ways in which we can serve our communities without ripping the heart out. I propose this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. You have a second?
Happy to second, convener.
Thank you. A couple of points in there. Mr. Gillespie, are you still online with us? Do you want to say anything in relation to the consultation in the past and what's proposed?
Through yourself, convener. Yes, I'm still here. Thank you very much. Yes, the consultation in the past, and I think one of the things following on from Councillor Hannah is that we've done what I will call extensive consultation because it's been over a certain amount of years that we've done that, and we've certainly had a common theme back from our communities. And we're now at the, as far as we're going for this report, at an engagement stage. Our communities, when spoken through either SPR or the Strategic Property Review or through budget reviews with our communities, we have been out there, we have told the story, we've been honest, we've been truthful, and we've been transparent. And we got a lot of feedback from our communities. And local members were present at some of these as well and invited to go to these for previous years as well. And some of the themes that were coming back were things that we have delivered on, things where they were very clear right across all the 9 wards. They wanted to keep library services, they wanted the libraries to be centre of their communities, and that's now been agreed by council, where the report is a 5-year review on that, and certainly that's a positive. They wanted more money on the actual community properties, and within their support, that's certainly within that. The one thing they also said is they appreciated that things would need to close because of the rise in cost, but what they did want to be aware of what it is. And certainly the last one that I done there was actually we were to come back with proposals, come back with what our thoughts were, but also give them an opportunity to feed back and to see if they had any other ideas out with officers and members. So there has been a lot of engagement. There has been some honest engagement and some, what I will say, surprising feedback in regards to what our communities are aware of, what they want. But the one thing they said before is, or what was changing was, at least they were getting the transparency and they were getting the actual facts and figures of what it was costing the council and the communities to run. And they would rather have, what I would say is, good quality facilities rather than a lot of facilities that were being run down, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. I just wanted to clarify another point in relation to the 180 million from 2016. Paul, that's an accumulative effect over a number of years. Certainly, I'm aware of that being raised as a continual issue, certainly from 2012 onwards, if not from 2007, as being a pressure on the council as the maintenance of our leisure facilities at that time. But that's not something that has just all of a sudden appeared in 2016. It was something that was a cumulative effect. And I don't know whether you have anything you want to comment on that.
Yes, Convener. These legacy backlog maintenance issues go all the way back through time. There's a lot of properties dating back to previous authorities, pre-96. They're old buildings that take a lot to maintain, and ultimately across all local authorities in Scotland, there is just not enough money to support all the buildings that were inherited. And a number of authorities are looking at substantial backlog maintenance programmes, and like yourselves, are now looking at substantial rationalisation of the estate.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll open it up the debate or comment from others in relation to the SPR and indeed the Labour amendment. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Like everybody else, every other councillor, every other party, when you see the bare facts that there's 133 properties that'll either be transferred or closed down, as I don't need to ask for everybody, because some of these buildings are the heart of the communities, especially the smaller communities, and I know our thinking is that we've got our schools and we need to utilise our schools more. Some of the places have the good schools. Some of the smaller places, and all they've got is the small buildings. And I know these decisions will be made when the report comes back. And it's when we talk about involving in a core value for our audit, the communities is number one. And as Councillor Hannah has already mentioned, that there is people that didn't get the opportunity of the consultation previously, and I'm sure when we offer it this time, there'll be a lot more people take that opportunity up, because they now understand how serious this is, and it is a big step going forward, and I know money is very, very short. So our amendment, we've added to the amendment that was already circulated. I've sent it to Mr. Moody. The amendment is in item 7 at the end, 2.1, subject to recognising that the town halls, Grangemouth and Bowness, and this scheme, the Adobe wall, should play as core functions in serving and in strengthening our communities. And in point 2.1.8 recognises that selling these buildings will not reduce the area-wide emissions. Remember, get away from the council, the area-wide emissions that will no decrease. And that retrofitting to raise energy efficiency in these buildings to reduce area-wide emissions, recognise that the retrofitting of buildings is expensive and unlikely to be afforded by communities. What we're saying is, if we're giving these transfers to the communities, they won't have the finance to retrofit them. And therefore, as part of the support package, the council works out the estimated cost of energy efficient upgrades to national standards for the town halls, and officers report back on the cost of this at the point of the final decision, with a view of creating a specific fund from the £6 million capital fund already mentioned, so community-led groups can afford to retrofit their buildings. Also, taking on board the Labour amendment earlier, that council agrees to bring back any decision on SPR to full council, so that everybody gets a chance to put their views across, and also that council agrees to bring back the decision on the proposed closure of the 4 swimming pools to full council. My colleague here, Councillor Spears, already mentioned
Okay,
and Ritchie, Councillor Ritchie, not getting an opportunity. Could also be said for Councillor Buchanan, who hasn't had a chance to put his points across. It's a big decision for this council, and if we do agree to these closures, just think as a group we feel it needs to be all the councillors that make that decision. I understand where everybody is coming from regarding their own areas. As Councillor Hannah mentioned, we've got 18 in our area, and the conversation I had with Anne is knowing exactly the 18. I couldn't tell you for every one of these buildings what the cost would be for to get them retrofitted, what it would cost for to close it. So getting that time for the consultation is important. That's your amendment, Convener. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, James, and a seconder.
Happy to second.
Thank you, just the procedure. It's helpful to know, but just to say we will take the amendment individually against these motions, but in order to give certainly my colleagues an opportunity to just consider the change, if we can have maybe a 5-minute recess there, and then I'll get Colin to take us through the voting process. Okay, we have to take 5 minutes. Okay, thanks, folks. Thanks, folks. If we can come back. I'll go to Councillor Garner first to respond to the amendments, and then I'll go to Mr Moody to the voting procedure.
Thank you, Convener. I won't dwell on this long at all. I've read both the amendments coming in and spoken with the group, and I'm happy to accept the amendments brought forward by the Conservative group.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garner. Colin, do you want to just talk us through how the what process of voting?
Yes, thank you, Convener. And as members will know, the motion has been moved already by Councillor Garner and seconded by you. And as I understand, Councillor Garner is proposing to adopt the terms of the Conservative amendment within the motion already moved. And I just need to formally ask you as seconder if you're going to agree with that. And that being the case, the motion which is before the executive changes to incorporate the aspects of the Conservative amendment. So those have already been circulated, but as also read by Councillor Kerr, were the additional aspects of providing that the provisions, instead of going to the Education, Children and Young People Executive and to this executive, both go to full council. So the other principal change is that full council will make the decision on the final decision. So that is the motion as currently stands, and that's the motion against which Councillor Hannah's amendment currently stands. And if you're content, then I think we can proceed to the vote on that position.
Councillor Spears.
A point of clarification. So you're saying that you use the 6 million capital fund to retrofit buildings for climate change?
That's not what it says, Councillor Spears.
So it says on the except amendment that you just accepted.
But it says that a contribution from that 6 million would be used as a thought to help that process. I don't know whether Councillor Kerr and Councillor Bundy maybe want to clarify further.
That's exactly what it is saying. You know, that obviously £6 million is a lot of money, but when you're trying to refit buildings, it doesn't go a long way. So what we're saying is that some of that 6 million will go to help towards the town halls. And obviously in the other buildings it's worth we're going to keep. Because the communities will only be able, if this transfers, they will only be able to have the funding for that. So that 6 million will help towards that and the town hall.
And my understanding that could be used in a variety of ways, including matched funding. to help support the communities. But that's as a report is to come back to full council anyway in relation to that, and that'll probably be able to set out more detail. But it's not saying that's what that whole 6 million would be used for, and just a contribution from that.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
convener. So the motion as adjusted is moved by Councillor Garner and is seconded by you, against which there is an amendment which has been circulated, moved by Councillor Hannah and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Councillor Bunn.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Garner.
Motion.
Councillor Hannah.
Amended.
Councillor Kerr.
Motion.
Councillor Meiklejohn.
Motion.
Councillor Nimmo.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Sinclair.
Motion.
Councillor Spears.
Amendment.
And Councillor Stapleton.
Amendment.
Here, there are 6 votes for the motion, there are 5 votes for the amendment, and the motion is carried. And it's maybe worth confirming, convener, that since the Conservative Group amendment was adopted in effect by the motion, that the Leader is happy for the amendment to drop, since it's effectively already in the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colin, and thank you, colleagues, for your forbearance on that process. Move on to item 8, which is the Waste Services Review, and we have a presentation from Douglas Garner.
Convener, sure, somebody doing again.
Oh,
Councillor Dixon.
yes.
Oh, that was missing it.
Just hope he's not going to refresh you in.
I'd like to thank Councillor Flowers for being member of me.
No problem.
Okay, apologies, Councillor Bowes. Councillor, sorry, Douglas, do you want to talk to the report, please?
Yeah, sure, happy to do that. Good afternoon, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to propose a number of changes in waste services that will address forthcoming legislative and regulatory issues. The report also outlines proposals enabling efficiencies and moves the Council towards carbon reduction targets and strategic objectives. The Executive are asked to agree a number of recommendations, and the first one being that Falkirk Council adopts the updated National Code of Practice when published for residual waste, so that additional capacity would only be granted to householders of 7 and above, and this would be subject to application. The Code of Practice is currently under review and is designed to further enhance the quality and quantity of recyclate collected from the curbside and other streams. The aspiration is for continuity of curb collections right across Scotland. Secondly, the Executive are asked to note the forthcoming biodegradable landfill ban, which takes effect from the 31st of December 2025, and the financial impact that this is likely to have on the Council. The report details the Council's strategy towards securing waste treatment facilities and the associated timeline for delivery. Through this contract, the Council will no longer be reliant on landfill for the disposal of residual waste well in advance of the ban date. The Executive are asked to agree to the reintroduction of a charge for bulky uplifts at £40 per uplift, removing the provision of 1 free uplift per household per year. In recognition of the Council's poverty strategy, those residents in receipt of eligible benefits would receive 1 free collection per annum. As detailed within the report, chargeable bulky uplift collections is commonplace across Scotland and indeed in the wider UK. The executive are also asked to agree that a booking system is introduced as soon as practically possible for all vehicles looking to gain entry to the council's household waste recycling centres. A booking system brings several benefits, including shorter waiting times for householders when they visit, improving customer experience, as well as improving the health and safety of our recycling centre staff, providing improved control over the volume of traffic coming on site at any one time. Additionally, it will also help reduce the risk of commercial waste abuse. The executive are also asked to agree that Falkirk Council reviews its opening times for household waste recycling centres to 10 AM to 6 PM. This recommendation will help reduce the council's reliance on both overtime and casual staff. Both sites would remain open at the busiest times, including weekends, and there's a table within the report showing the trend analysis of that. The executive are asked to agree to the removal of the Environment Enforcement Team from the summer of 2023. As detailed within the report, we will work with our trade union partners and affected employees under relevant policies with a view to implementing any reduction through voluntary means as far as possible. This could include offering voluntary severance and seeking alternative roles within the council. The council would maintain provision for the reporting of fly tipping, as well as the collection of items deposited in public land. Additionally, the council will retain officers authorised to issue fixed penalty notices where evidence allows. Close relations with SEPA will be maintained and developed, as well as highlighting to residents and businesses the correct disposal routes for their waste through our comprehensive education programme. The executive are asked to agree to the removal of the Environment Improvement Fund from April 2023, and this will provide the council with a saving of £50,000. As detailed within the body of the report, alternative funding opportunities remain open to members of the public and community groups. The executive are also asked to agree to the introduction of a charge for the collection of brown bins, predominantly for garden waste collections, at an annual charge of £35 per bin. For those households receiving financial benefit, in recognition of the council's poverty strategy, those residents in receipt of eligible benefits would only be subject to 50% of the charge. Garden waste collections are presently not a mandatory service, and rather than remove the service, this option allows the service to be maintained and generate additional revenue to help offset costs. The executive are also asked to agree that an estimated £60,000 of the savings generated from these measures is used to fund an expansion of the HVO fuel pilot to reduce carbon emissions in the heavy fleet by up to 90% per vehicle. This is on the back of a successful pilot which has been running for almost a year now and offers the council a greener option for running its larger fleet. Over and above the recommendations, the report reflects upon the impact of the deposit return scheme, which is scheduled for implementation by mid-August next year. DRS places a value of 20 pence on glass bottles, clear plastic bottles and aluminium drinks cans. These containers can be returned over the counter to retailers or a network of automated reverse vending machines. An independent forecast in early 2021 suggested that DRS would have a negative financial impact to the council of circa £234,000. However, it should be noted that this is likely to be significantly greater due to current market values. The introduction of DRS will have a fundamental impact on the volume and composition of recyclate being collected at the curbside, which will significantly decrease, and this is addressed in a separate report to the executive. In conclusion, the changes proposed in this report will allow the council to respond to forthcoming legislative and regulatory change and create a more efficient operational service. Saving proposals detailed within the report total £970,000, and overall, after cost pressures, a net savings target of £310,000 has been identified. If these steps were not to be taken, then an additional revenue burden will emerge for the council, and as highlighted within the report, it is not clear at this point how that might be mitigated against. That's a summary of the report, Chair.
Thank you, Douglas. Again, we have a procedural motion for this particular item, which I would propose to take before we move elsewhere. So I'll ask Councillor Hannah to move the motion.
Thank you. As regards this report, it has considerable impact across the whole of the Falkirk Council area, in the same way as the strategic property review had a considerable impact across the whole of the council area. I have had issues raised with me by people from a number of different areas. I've had issues raised with me by a number of different councillors. I think it's important that councillors are able to have their say on this. I'm not saying in principle whether I agree or disagree with any of the individual proposals in this report. I do think, though, that the general impact on the Falkirk Council area should be taken into account. I think concerns that have been raised with me have included concerns about the possibility of fly tipping, concerns about the difficulties that people with disabilities might have. There are a whole host of different concerns people have been raising. The last equality impact assessments on some of these proposals were done back in 2021, I think. And so I think that there are issues that need to be addressed in that as well. So I would like this to be remitted to the full council meeting to enable all councillors from all wards to have an opportunity to have their say on the impact in their areas.
Okay, thank you. Seconder?
Happy to second the convener, just to add a couple of points to Councillor Hannah's. I think with this area being in climate change as well, I am as well concerned in the week since this came back in the report with the prospect of buy-in from various stakeholders around the community, including individuals who would have to pay this charge, and especially in the context of the cost of living crisis, changes to how different people with different demographics may react to this current charge being put in at this time. I think it's absolutely crucial, as Councillor Hannah has reiterated, that we use the diversity of our council across areas to make sure that we understand when we're reacting and making policy in this manner, and especially in this context, that we get a full perspective when pushing this forward. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Is it a question, Councillor Spears? Because this is again is a procedural motion. I'm not taking debate.
We have an executive council, and we are elected to come here to represent the opinion, not just their constituents, but also the councillors that can't make it today. So if you don't want to hear what they've got to say, then okay.
Well, this isn't a debate, this is a procedural motion, and the debate may well come after vote, and in which case you'll have your opportunity at that time. Okay, if we move to the vote.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And again, as you say, this is a motion by Councillor Hannah, seconded by Councillor Steenbeck, which is to defer consideration to council. And again, the vote is for or against. Councillor Bowes.
Against.
Councillor Bundy.
Against.
Councillor Devine.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hannah.
For.
Councillor Kerr.
Against.
Councillor Meiklejohn. John.
Against.
Councillor Nimmo.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Sinclair.
Against.
Councillor Spears. For. And Councillor Steenbeck.
For.
Okay, there are 5 votes for the motion, 7 against, so the matter remains at the executive.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Sinclair to move the motion.
Thank you, Convener. First, can I take the opportunity to thank Douglas Gardner and his team for the work that's gone into delivering this report. As we're all aware, the circumstances for services are incredibly challenging, so I'd like to thank him for that. As a body, today we have been invited to consider a series of recommendations which will assist the waste service in meeting the Council's financial sustainability and carbon reduction targets and strategies. As has already been alluded to, this paper is pretty wide-ranging and covers forthcoming regulatory and legislative impacts. It provides options for both cost savings and revenue generation, which both align and recognise actions taken or proposed by other Scottish local authorities and restructure service delivery within the service, providing options for wider council delivery consideration. The executive were further invited to note the positive contribution to the Council's climate emergency targets, as well as the wider 2040 and 2045 national targets, which the proposed recommendations address. This is one of several reports we will face with difficult and unpopular decisions to take. Our role is to ensure that any decision allows services to continue being delivered, at the same time as preserving and enhancing provision of other services that our communities rely on. Executive will also have been given a copy of a positive amendment that the Ways and Administration wish to make to the report concerning the Environmental Improvement Fund. And while the current iteration of the fund has had less uptake than anticipated, we are still committed to ensuring there is funding available for communities to improve their local environment. And we propose to retain the fund at a level of £1 per year, and I trust that this, along with other recommendations in the report, are supported. And with that, I move the report and the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shapiro. There is other amendments to this report, and I'll just ask officers to circulate that. I'm sorry I should have done that prior to Councillor Garner.
Happy to second the report and the amendment set in the right.
It will give us an opportunity for the amendments to be circulated. Okay, I will now open up debate.
I would refer to Councillor Steenland. The amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Convener and Councillor Barron. So I believe that we've managed to circulate the second amendment the Labour Group put forward to this, which is replacing the recommendations with the following: executive agrees that officers should undertake a waste services review, leave up to date accordance and property impact assessments and detailed climate change impact assessments on the proposed option. Report the review to be brought to full council with options, advantages and disadvantages of each option outlined. Managed to circulate that.
Can I ask you to slow down, Paul, can I, just a wee bit?
I've heard that before.
You were going at a fair rate of knots there.
We want to savour everyone.
Fantastic. Anyway, so we should have circulated that amendment. As I've alluded to when seconding the other amendment, the impact of what we're putting forward to in the current economic context that we are facing is substantially higher than it would have been potentially this time last year. I've been out speaking to a lot of people who've had attendance surgeries over this matter. I'm sure plenty of other councillors have been contacted in relation to things in the proposal that's been brought in front of us. £40 for a lot of people at the moment may be too high price to pay for the brown bin, and I think that we must talk about the broader policy implications that that could potentially have. It will often be used by people with gardens, but even people who engage in climate beneficial activity, people who are attempting to make their homes greener, are attempting to engage in more sustainable habits. And I would say, and I've intimated this, and I've engaged in good faith and positive conversations with administration and officers on this. I do believe that this proposal will give us a better opportunity to understand exactly how people will react to this. I think that the prospect of potentially cross-contamination needs to be explored to a greater extent, as put in there. We have seen problems flag up in imagine all of our wards in relation to that, especially in the context of people having to pay. I think there'll be a greater degree of people in our wards who will now today go, well, rather than paying it, I'm just not going to use it, and the implications of that cannot be understated and must be assessed to a greater extent. And the reason it should also be brought back to full council is that this is a process, as Councillor Sinclair laid out, of maximising income and where we manage to get that funding from. I think that that is important in a council context, as alluded to in the current economic context we're dealing with, of who pays and where it comes from. And I think that there is a severe degree of assessment that needs to be done, considering the backlash from our communities in relation to paying that. I think it makes a fundamental change to how we do provide our service in this regard, especially as such a crucial service and crucial buy-in from the community for using brown bin and continuing to be proactive in building a sustainable Falkirk. I move this amendment for those purposes.
Thank you, Councillor Singback. I've got a second. Councillor Nimmo.
Convener, thanks very much. Can I just, I'm happy to second the amendment. Can I just start off by saying I'm not surprised that Waste Services is currently under review. The current waste strategy and litter strategy is failing, and it's certainly not fit for purpose. You only need to look at the number of contaminated bins in Grangemouth. Now, I realise obviously that there's a very high proportion of flatted properties in Grangemouth, but we don't seem to be able to deal with the problems quickly enough or appropriately for that matter. Just in relation to the cost of living crisis, according to this report, it's vanished overnight. Now, £40 for a special uplift, I don't think very many people are going to be able to afford £40 or willing to pay £40 for a special uplift. The only thing that's going to happen here is a very significant increase in fly tipping and rubbish just getting left in bags indiscriminately. One free for people on benefits. Okay, that's maybe a bonus. If you're on benefits, you're getting one free. What if you need more? You're not going to be able to afford to pay for them. The brown bin situation, we're being asked to consider an annual charge of £35 per bin. Again, a 50% reduction if you're on benefit. Now, if you're on benefit, £7.50 to get your brown bin emptied isn't really going to be a priority for people that can't afford to feed themselves. There needs to be some recognition built into this of the cost of living crisis and the impact that that's having on cash-strapped families. I'm happy to second the amendment, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Nimmo. Douglas, I wonder if you could maybe give a little bit of a comment. I know that there's information, particularly in relation to fly tipping within the report, also in relation to disabilities, the issues around the one free uplift for those benefits, and a bit about statutory services.
I'm happy to do that, Chair. So a number of issues raised there. Certainly with regards to the garden waste charges was mentioned there, and the potential concern over fly tipping there. I have to say, and it's shared within the report, that charging for garden waste and indeed bulky waste is commonplace right across Scotland. In fact, it's more common than not to have charges, certainly for bulky waste. With regards to specifically brown bin charges, we've obviously worked closely with other local authorities that do have a charge for brown bin and garden waste charges, and I'm pleased to report that they have not reported any increase in fly tipping following the introduction of a charge. With regards to the charging for bulky waste, again, it's more common than not to have charges for bulky waste collections. What I would say as well, that there are alternative options for members of the public that may not want to or maybe can't afford a bulky collection charge, including the use of charitable organisations. And one thing that we will do is work closely with the Community Recycle Network for Scotland and help promote the alternative outlets for bulky waste items. From a litter strategy point of view, the litter strategy has been a very successful, nationally recognised strategy in Scotland and again within the wider UK. I wouldn't necessarily tie it to domestic bins. That's something that's slightly different and doesn't necessarily fall within the litter strategy per se. But I will happily make a commitment to work with Councillor Nimmo and look at the issues specific to his ward. In the past, we have taken a focused approach with regards to fly tipping in areas surrounded by domestic properties, and that has proven to be very successful. And again, I'm happy to undertake that within the Grangemouth area. Sorry, Councillor, what else? Was there anything else that I've missed there?
It was just about what we provide by way of statutory services.
So the garden waste collection service, just to be clear, it isn't a mandatory service. We don't have to provide that service, and that's why rather than remove the service altogether, because it is a popular service, that's why the waste service put up the option to charge for the service to help offset our costs, rather than, as I say, remove it altogether.
Okay, thank you. You're on.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Can I maybe just add a follow on to that? I'm not really interested, Douglas, in what other councils do. I'm interested in the effects that these decisions that we are being asked to make are going to have on the people in Falkirk, and in particular the people in Grangemouth. £40 for a special uplift. How did you arrive at that figure?
Okay, so again, we looked at the national average. We also considered our on costs as well. As you'll probably be aware, the council doesn't provide that service in-house. So we've obviously got to pay for a contractor, but over and above that, you've got to cover your disposal costs. But again, we took a step back and we considered the kind of average cost right across Scotland as well.
Okay, thanks, Douglas. Thanks, Convener.
Questions I've got. Ewan, and Councillor Spears and Councillor Hannah.
Thank you very much, Convener. Just a few questions for Douglas on that one. So I think probably just the first one I'll ask is on the statutory service and just an expansion the Convener asked. In 5.55 in the report, there's a suggestion that this may become a statutory service. What conversations have been had? Is there any suggestion coming at the Scottish Government currently that we would have any understanding of when that would be, what timeline that would be enacted, and where does the suggestion that this might happen originate from? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. So yes, there is a possibility that the garden waste charges may in future become a statutory service. Again, that's been most recently highlighted within the draft Circular Economy Bill, although it is not yet confirmed exactly when that will be implemented.
I think 5.8 as well notes that we would be hoping to encourage households to minimise waste. How are we going to put in protections under this current motion to make sure that households do take that up? What engagement would be done with the public? And on the second hand, what would our reaction be if the fly tipping situation does deteriorate, as we can only, as councillors, officers, absolutely everybody only rely on projections and assurances that that strategy will work? What would we do in reaction to that if the fly tipping situation became viscerally worse?
So a multifaceted approach, Councillor. We would go out and about. As I say, we've been tackling difficult areas. I say with great success. So there would be a mixture of door knocking, carrying out workshops, working with our communities, as well as sending out promotional information as well. I think what we would also want to do is promote the Trusted Traders scheme. I believe that a lot of the fly tipping that occurs within Falkirk is down to your white van man, your illegitimate white van man. So we want to make sure that when members of the public do look to approach a contractor for the removal of their waste, that they're making an informed decision, and that the contractor that they're working with has the appropriate paperwork and can demonstrate that the material they're looking to dispose of is being disposed of via the appropriate route.
That's what you can be now. At 5.40, so 5.40, we're talking about the removal of the environmental enforcement field. You were talking about the vast majority of fly tipping occurring just there from the illegitimate white van man. In our heads, obviously, we're calibrating the strategy to a more multi-service approach, essentially, more trained individuals coming from different places dealing with this problem rather than the exclusive team under this. would the fact that team have that specialist potential knowledge and understanding of where flight tipping occurs and where it originates from not lend itself to better enforcement outcomes? Also, have we calculated how much cost per successful enforcement action to the council it currently costs? Have we projected the costs if we do remove this team? Thank you. So, Councillor, there's a number of issues there. I think prevention is always a preference. So again, a continued focus on education and prevention through a number of means that I've highlighted already. Absolutely, we would be looking to work closely with colleagues across services within the council that still have the ability to issue fixed penalties where possible. And again, the report mentions that, you know, specifically colleagues from environmental health and, you know, we have already been in positive discussions with colleagues there. So I don't see there being any concerns there. With regards to the impact, was it financial impact you asked about, sorry? Yeah, so currently the cost per successful enforcement action against a fly tipper as it stands with this team in place versus what we anticipate it to be once, if this team does get removed. Well, as I say, we would still maintain the ability to issue fixed penalties. Would therefore the removal of this team not potentially precipitate a greater cost, as you would have to train up individuals to a greater extent and recalibrate services towards something. There are issues within the services that are already trained up to issue fixed penalties.
I think Mr. Binney's maybe got something like to contribute to that.
Through you, convener. I just wanted to make 2 points. Firstly, that the council previously operated a special uplift charge, and during that period of the year that it was in place, there were no signs of any increase in fly tipping. So there's an established almost pilot, if you like, that's already been done that shows that concerns over significant rises in fly tipping are perhaps not substantiated. But the second point with regard to the issuing of fixed penalty notices, I think it's important that we look at the scale of what we do, and year to date, we're issuing an average of 5 fixed penalty notices per month for fly tipping. So I think, you know, when we're sort of scaling up the difference between what this proposal would be like with what will happen in the next financial year, we're not in a place where there are hundreds of fixed penalty notices getting issued for fly tipping. And I think that is an important aspect to the proposal in place. Thank you.
Malcolm, just to clarify that a wee bit about your point around fixed penalty fly tipping notices, that we can only issue those where we can identify who it is that's doing the fly tipping, because we know fly tipping goes on, but we're not able to issue penalty notices because we don't know who it is.
Absolutely, it's really challenging to catch someone in the act of fly tipping, and then to be able to source the appropriate identification to follow through to get a fully funded fixed penalty notice. And I think Douglas's point about prevention and communication being the more successful route for this is very valid.
Okay, thank you. Was that all your questions?
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Spears, Councillor Hannah and Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, just a couple of questions for Douglas. Does the brown bin 35 per annum cost take into consideration garden size? I know personally I have quite a big garden and I have made great use of the brown bin, but I also live next to a public park, and especially at this time of year it's filled with leaves because I've got to clear the street constantly. And the pavement, because it's a safe route to school and we wouldn't want the kids slipping and hurting ourselves. Have you offered to people, especially in the rural areas, composters and stuff like that?
And my concern is that it'll put people off doing their garden if it's going to cost them so much money. And, you know, this council has been great in garden competitions and try to stress to people that they need to maintain the property they either own or rent. Nextly, the special uplift payments. Has there been any consideration regarding if you say there's no increase in fly tipping, but it's catching the fly tippers. So what you're really saying is there's no increase in catching the fly tippers. It doesn't mean to say that the fly tipping doesn't go ahead. You know, are we working with farmers who have to pick up the cost of this? You know, they're the animals that are getting eating this stuff that people are tipping over farmers' fences. I would hate this to become a fly tippers charter where we have, you know, really no control because we're charging people too much that can't afford it. And then we're going to lead to the whole cross-contamination of green bins because everybody will just put everything in the green bin because it doesn't cost them. You know, we're stirring up more trouble here than we're going to solve.
Thank you, Councillor Spears. Douglas?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a couple of points there raised by Councillor Spears, so I'll take them in order. So the charge, Councillor, would be per bin. With regards compost, no, we wouldn't provide decomposters, but our website certainly has advice on composting on how to get the best out of your compost bin and actual, you know, how to make your own compost bin. Again, for clarity, and it's detailed within the report, if you're paying the full price per bin, that equates to £2.69 per collection. If you're on benefits, then that would be £1.35 per collection. We've mentioned already about, you know, how education plays an absolute pivotal role with regards to the prevention of fly tipping, and I've mentioned already about how we would look to develop the working relationship with the trusted traders, so that when householders are looking to dispose of their bulky waste out with the council, then, you know, they can be confident that the person or the company that they're engaging with is legitimate. Yes, we are working closely with private landowners, including farmers, and again, that's detailed within the council's litter strategy. With regards to garden waste potentially going into the waste stream, then again, yes, there is a real possibility that some garden waste may go into the waste stream. And again, through work or through speaking with local authorities that do charge for garden waste, that does happen. However, any additional costs are more than offset by the income that brought in via the charging for brown bins.
Thank you, Douglas. I think Malcolm, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, through you, convener. I just wanted to make the point, if we go to page 171 and look at table 3, you'll see that ourselves and East Lothian are pretty much the only councils in Scotland who are not currently charging for bulky uplift. And I think, you know, we often see kind of evidence and reassurance about how something will happen. And I think that what I don't believe that the case is that Falkirk is particularly different to any other part of Scotland. Obviously, it will have its regional differences, but this is an uplift charge that is in place in most councils across Scotland and operates successfully without the large concerns that, you know, are being raised. And I think a similar point would be with regard to the table at 5.54 with regard to the garden waste charges, that a number of councils, both rural and urban, charge for garden waste, and Douglas will reassure us if required, they do not experience the problems that are being raised here as well. So I would urge elected members to consider the sort of benchmarking that's in place across Scotland, and that this is something that we could monitor once in place to see what the impact was and what mitigation we could put in place if those things happen. But at present, I don't believe that there is case study examples of the concerns that are being raised.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Convener. We have had a couple of very useful briefings from officers to go through this report and to go through some of the issues around waste services. But I think the number of questions that have been raised here are kind of evidence of the fact that councillors are still a little uncomfortable with this and don't feel as if we have enough information to support this, which is in support of Councillor Steenbank's amendment that he has put forward to actually do a wider review and give us a bit more time to think about this, a bit more information. In relation to the different ways that people can dispose of bulky waste, the first problem is that people who are on low incomes or even sometimes middling incomes, they're not disposing of the kind of bulky waste that charity shops are interested in. The things that they're disposing of are things that are now past their use-by date, items which really are not fit for purpose, and charity shops are not really interested. The other problem about people on low incomes and sometimes middling incomes is that if there's no free bulky uplift, you're suggesting that they might be able to go to the recycling centres. But if people don't have cars or cars big enough, they can't do that. So I think there are real limitations to these alternatives for people on low incomes. And I think the issue that we have here is it's about the timing of this. We are right in the midst of a cost of living crisis. People's incomes are being stretched very, very heavily at the moment. And it's uncomfortable, I think, to be putting additional burdens on people. I'm supporting Councillor Steenbank's amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hannah. I think a lot of the information that we're seeking is actually in the report, in the papers. I think that the information is very compelling within the papers. So I'm a bit surprised that that's some of what you're saying, and I appreciate that you're taking the time to have that. But the information is there from other councils in the benchmarking, and yeah, I get people's finances are stretched. But right now, councils in a very difficult position financially as well. We are not immune from the cost of living crisis ourselves, and we have a significant task ahead of us in being able to get to a balanced budget. So that cannot be totally detached from the reports that we're seeing in front of us today as well. Okay, I've got Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. A couple of questions for Douglas McCann on some of the points with regards to the booking system, Douglas. Does that, I know we trialled it when it was the COVID, does that make a saving for the council? If it does, how does it make a saving?
Councillor, so the only booking system that we have ever had is actually for commercial vehicles or householders with vans. We don't actually have a booking system for domestic type vehicles. That's something we're looking to bring in, and as I say, as is highlighted within the report, then sorry, as highlighted within the report, it's more a health and safety thing rather than a financial saving. So it basically gives us greater control over who's coming into our site. It reduces the risk of commercial waste abuse, and from a traffic management perspective, it's far better as well, because we can regulate the number of cars coming in at any particular time. So it's more so that than a financial saving.
That leads me on to my next question. Obviously, they'll need to book these in online. What if somebody's not got a computer, or can they do that online? How will they manage?
So as an alternative, councillor, we would look to obviously want to promote the online booking as much as possible. The majority of folk that will visit, will either have a smartphone or a tablet at home. However, for those that can't, I appreciate not everybody has that technology, then they can facilitate that through the contact centre.
Last question on that, when we're saying about shutting the hours from 10 PM to 6 PM, and then in the graph in page 169, so the people who are going to Roughmute and Kinneil between those times, which is 170 people, they would need to find that time. I'm trying to get us, that'll make it harder for people because of the space or the time slots that they'll be allocated.
So I mean, there's still capacity within the rest of the day, councillor, to accommodate people. And again, by having a booking system, we can determine just how many people come in at a set time. Again, so that it would prevent likes of folk queuing for long periods of time, which would hopefully improve customer satisfaction, and that there'll be less idling. And again, from a traffic management perspective, then there are benefits from that perspective as well.
With regards to the fee for the ground bin, we've got an estimate that would give us for the council £350,000, an extra £350 a year. How accurate do you think that is, Douglas? Is that a conservative estimate, or?
Yeah, I would suggest it probably is a conservative estimate, councillor. It's difficult to judge, and that we don't know exactly what the participation levels will be. However, when we came to those estimates, we considered the participation levels with other local authorities. What makes it slightly more difficult to predict is the fact that Falkirk Council would have a discount for families that meet a certain criteria, or for households that meet a certain criteria, and that isn't necessarily widespread. In other local authorities, it tends to be a flat cost. So again, it most likely is a conservative estimate, but as well informed as it can be.
Just, I'm looking through the report regarding the bulky uplift. I've maybe not picked it up, but most of the other councils, as you've already stated, that they've got a financial aspect to it, but they've also got amount of items. Have we highlighted in the report how many items we would allow for that? I can't see it.
Right, so it would be, we would maintain the five items, councillor, so it would be 5 items per uplift. And you're quite right in pointing out that there is a significant differential between local authorities when it comes to the management of bulky collections, but we would look to maintain the 5 items with per collection.
Probably it was answered by Mr. Benny earlier on, but reading on for what Councillor Spears says, did we see an increase in fly tipping? Not just the amount of people that were caught. What did we see an increase the last time that we charged for an uplift?
Malcolm, kind of mentioned that, and you think you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Douglas will correct me if I get this wrong, but if you go to the table, scrolling to it now. If you go to the table at page 170, it was 2019-20 that I believe that the uplift charge was operating, and you can see that there is a negligible difference between 2018 and 19 and 2019-20 in terms of how many fly tipping reports were received. If you want an exact comparison in terms of that, I wonder if I could just come back to the point about the online booking system. And again, the report highlights that an online booking system operates at a number of councils in Scotland, and I know myself I've used one in Fife, and the system works well. Appreciate, I'm someone who has a smartphone, etc. But I think 94% of the population of Scotland has a smartphone, so the vast majority of people be able to book very easily. In my experience, typically you get a slot on that day. Maybe you might need to wait an hour or two before jumping in your car, but you can get a slot. But the fact that the flow of traffic is managed means that you typically drive in and can get straight in rather than having to sit and wait. And so we do get a benefit both in terms of you wasting your time, but also the idling of the vehicle, giving out emissions. And like all things, I'd probably really ask for elected members to sort of trust us to try and make it work, but also see if we implement something like a booking system and there were teething problems, that we would totally look to resolve those problems. It wouldn't just be council or executive agreed it, so that's it, we're not doing any more with it. We would constantly refine and seek to improve and get it right. But I am reassured that I've seen it work elsewhere and work successfully, and I believe that we can make it work again in Falkirk. I think the benefits of keeping our staff safe on site, reducing emissions, and actually making it a better experience for residents, give it a good positive for introduction.
Thanks for that, Malcolm. To be fair, perhaps these times were during COVID, so times where the centres were open, so I would expect them to be an increase in fly tipping because of that. I do understand. I understand why we're asking, and I believe that this is the road we need to do. But when they can't get a booking, or when they can't get to put their stuff into the rough view or no use to the phone. So take the councillors that's here in their ward at the phone, and it's us that get it in the neck. So getting it right is important. And I understand you can't just laugh, and it's like every system that you put in, you will have teething problems with. I understand that, but reacting to the problems will be key. And just to highlight, it's no use gets the slack. It's us.
Through you, convener, I appreciate that. I think our contact centre would also experience sort of that sort of demand, and we would seek to respond to it. Just to make the point, 2019-20 in terms of fly tipping was before COVID, and the online booking systems were introduced in a number of other councils during the COVID period, but I think in a number of cases those have been retained. So it's still, if Douglas will correct me, but I think neighbouring Stirling still operates. its online booking system, so that they were sort of introduced, proved to work during COVID, when in actual fact, dare I say, there wasn't much else to do than drive to the dump and get rid of your stuff. So it became actually a more high in demand experience. So, but it's sustained, as we come out of COVID. And so I know it's a sort of leap of faith, but I would really ask for, if it's all possible, for you to trust us to make sure it works and focus on that sort of 6% of the population or residents who don't have a smartphone, and making sure that they're not inconvenienced by this process.
Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, I've got Councillor Bundy, Councillor Garner and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Convener. It's just a quick question about the online booking and capacity. How many domestic vehicles to get in about?
Through you, Convener. I don't know if we've modelled it off that far, have we, Douglas? But my view would be that there would be no sense of trying to restrict the numbers of people coming in on a daily basis. It would be more flattening the amount. So where you look at the moment and you see a bulge kind of, between 12 and 2, we would seek to flatten that and mean that, you maybe came at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock instead. So it's not, if I'm coming across, hopefully, it's not that we're seeking to reduce the daily number of people who visit the sites. It's just flattening the number so that it's a regular amount per hour rather than a surge and then maybe quiet at other times.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Garner?
Thank you, Convener. It's my understanding that a wee bit confirmation is probably is we did try the composting systems previously. It was probably previously your time here, Douglas, and I do know the uptake then was very, very small. I think it was actually in single figures back when we did try it. And the other thing, just a wee bit, if you can confirm, the table with the councils that have the brown bin uplifts, I think it's my understanding that there's actually some councils that don't collect garden waste at all, which would add to that number. And I'm thinking that this may be just this table here, maybe the councils that actually replied to you. I think there may be even more numbers that you didn't get replied from. I think I'm going back to when I sort of had Councillor Sinclair's role. So yeah, if you could confirm them if possible, Douglas, would be appreciated.
Douglas?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, you're absolutely right in your analysis, Councillor Garner. It was before my time, but I'm very aware of it. It was RAP. It was a RAP funded. It was a RAP funded composting programme, and it was a national programme to promote the use of composters. Take up varied depending on which local authority you were based. But I think we very quickly reached saturation point for those that were interested in home composting. You're absolutely right in your analysis. Not every authority at present provides a garden waste collection scheme, and the table is based upon those local authorities that responded to us.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Convener. I don't want to dwell on this point for too long because I'm honestly sick of hearing myself talk about that. But I do feel like there could have been a lot more included, and there could have been a more comprehensive environmental impact report, which would have made it a lot easier to do and a lot more comfortable to make decisions. Just one specific example is we're talking about idling cars a lot and cutting down on idling cars. So we're talking as if it's backed up and cars are queuing for hours to get in. There's no evidence for that, or even a brief note of that. And the environmental impacts, maybe we would alleviate some of our concerns about it. So it would have been good to see that, just to inform our decision better. And can I also just ask, apologies if it was included in the report, if you go through the online booking system, what is your window of time? You've just answered that, and presumably that will it be corrected? Cars will still take the same amount of time to be processed, so there will still be idling cars. We'll surely need to confirm identity, be directed to the correct sites. Their contents need to be reviewed by the staff there. So we just talked through how long the window is, and surely it will just take the same amount of time to be processed.
Okay, Douglas?
On the booking system, Councillor, like Malcolm said, it's not necessarily to reduce the amount of cars coming on site. It's to give a more even flow of visitors coming on site at a particular time, again, to minimise idling, to minimise waiting times, and hopefully improve the customer experience. With regards to a window for when members of the public can dispose of their waste, that's not been defined as yet. But that's something that, you know, we can again look at other local authorities, and it varies between 10 to 15 minutes. But again, that's something that we would certainly look to learn from other local authorities.
Malcolm?
Convener, it would just be to say that the amount of time it takes to make your way around the site, if the site was empty, wouldn't change. But what we're saying is that if you appeared at Roughmute at a busy time, and you can see the table shows that there are times when it's more busy, then you may find yourself behind another vehicle that's currently got the space which is unloading, and so you have to wait there. So by smoothing the amount of vehicles going through, we're reducing the times when you will not be able to access and unload your vehicle. So it's an incremental benefit, but it is a benefit. You know, you guys will know better than me, but I'm aware that particularly before the change was made at Roughmute in particular, you know, in terms of the road layout, there were times when the cars could back up onto the road, which is why we have, you know, made the change. So I take the point entirely. We could have added some additional detail and trying to put as much as we possibly could in there. That's one of the most fulsome environmental updates that probably has been in a report to council or executive, but point taken. But I think there are anecdotal knowledge of people seeing backed up situations, and a smoother booking system would allow that to be minimised and you to be able to make your way around the site more sort of speedy.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I have had a request for a recess. What I'm going to suggest is we break for lunch and come back, and that will allow discussions and an opportunity to pop into the canteen. We can come back at 2:45. Okay. Thank you.